recording. All right, so we are in chapter 17. Can you believe it? We're making progress. This is the vocabulary of chapter 17. I don't think we did this vocabulary, did we? I had a tag in here already, but I didn't think we did it. So there's a verb for being alive or living. Oh, sorry, this is the adjective. Sorry. This is the adjective for being alive, chai. So if you want to say is a living king, or you'd say melech chai. If it were feminine, it would be chaya, not a surprising change. The plural is chayim, so you may have heard of the expression lechayim, to life. And then chayot is living things that are is the adjective. We're treating these as adjectives. And then you've got a noun, chayim, which is life, and its possessed form, which is chaye. When you'll notice that this looks a lot like this. And how do we know when it's a noun and what's an adjective? And you'll figure it out. It's not so hard. And we actually, in yesterday's class, when we were doing liturgical word pairs, there are things that they're calling word pairs that I think were more like adjectives. You'll get it. You'll do a decent translation. You'll figure it out in a sentence. We'll show you. Ken in modern Hebrew is always yes. But in biblical Hebrew, often it's like thus or so. Ken yehi ratzon, that's liturgical. Ken yehi ratzon, that may it be God's will. That's an expression that's used often. But ken, thus yehi, it should be ratzon, God's desire. Ken is thus or so. Mea is 100. Me'ot, ma'at, mea is 100. Me'ot are hundreds. It is a feminine noun. It ends in a. The plural, the possessed is ma'at. An altar, the thing that you put the offerings on, is a mazbeach. Mazbeach. I want to remind you about the furtive patach, that if you have a chet at the end of the word, and there's a patach underneath it, one of these guys, you always say the patach first. Mazbeach. There was a very clever, I should have copied it because I don't remember anything it said, but there was a very clever post. There's a Facebook group that I watch called JED Lab. I think it's Jewish Education Laboratory. And they ask questions like, what are you going to do for Passover or something? Anybody have plans? I have a 13-year-old kid who's never studied Hebrew, and now it's 2 months away. Their bar mitzvah, their birthday was last week, and now they want to start studying. Anybody have some, whatever. It could be panic, it could be wonderful, they could be sharing. But somebody just posted something adorable about how do you teach your kids to remember that when you have a patach, which is this thing under a chet at the end of the word, that you have to say ach instead of cha. And I just tell them. I don't. But they had things like, well, it's a basket and it's letting go, and then you say ach, and I don't know. I've got to pay more attention to those cute things. I didn't know. Mazbeach. Mizbachot is the plural. Even though it's a masculine noun, don't trust the plural. Don't trust the plural ending to decide if it's masculine or feminine. And mizbach is the possessed form. Then we have, this is such a great word, malach. And malachim, angel or messenger. Malachim are angels or messengers. The smichut is malach, which looks almost the same, except the kamatz turned into a patach. And then malache is the plural possessed. You may know the prayer, Shalom Aleichem Malache Hasharet Malache Elyon. So this is this. Shalom Aleichem Malache Hasharet. And I don't remember if it's going to be in the book or not, which means the angels of the serving, Hasharet. And then all the other verses is Bochem Shalom Malache Hashalom. Malache Hashalom is the angels or the messengers of peace. And it's common. But the next line says, Mi Melech, who's the king, Malache Hamlachim, which means the king of the kings of the kings, and Malachim and Milachim and Malache and Malache sound really similar, and they're not the same. And I don't think that most people who are looking at it from transliteration can tell that Melech doesn't have an aleph in the middle of it, and Malach does. But there's another connection here that I find really powerful, and I may be the only one, and it may have just been because one day where I was and how it was that it struck me. But there's a word, avodah, which has to do with worship or work, and the word eved, which is a slave or a servant. And the word for work is also the word for worship. And the word for slave is also the word for servant, meaning, a kind of if you're a servant of God, it's not like being a slave of the master or the king or the whatever. And so the same kind of parallel, I think, happens with malach, because malach is an angel, which is a messenger of God, but malacha, which is not going to be a word here, but malacha, spelled the same way, but instead of a final chaf, it's cha with a chaf and a kamatz and a handing. That means work or livelihood. It's the word that you're not allowed to do when on Shabbat. In the Decalogue, when it says, no manner of work shall you do on Shabbat, it says, kol mine malacha lo tasu, no manner of work shall you do. And it's malacha. So I think it's kind of interesting that the word for work is also the word for worship or serving God or being a messenger or an angel of God is connected to work. And I found this really cool parallel between all of them. And like I say, it may be more meaningful to me than it is to anybody else, but I thought that was really cool. Because it takes work. I did a podcast, what's today? Thursday, yesterday, that's supposed to air on Sunday on Red River Radio at 1 about faith. And we had a rabbi, a priest, and a minister, and it does sound like a joke, and we laughed a lot. And I will tell you some of my embarrassing jokes that I said, things like, we talked about, so the point of this is we realized that love is an action. It has to do with what you do. It's not just how you feel, that love is an action. And certainly in the Torah and the biblical passages, it's an action. At least in Torah, it's an action. And it's how you take care of each other. It's what you do to each other. And it doesn't just mean husband and wife. It says love your neighbor as yourself. It says love God as yourself. It says love the stranger because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. So you get all of those commandments about love. And it has to do with action. It's something that you do. And so I think about that when it comes to this. But we also did have two side conversations about there was a Methodist minister, an Orthodox priest, and me. And the minister said something about how there has to be pain and that you grow from the pain and you learn to love from pain and you learn to take care of each other from pain. And I said, look, it's just us, right? Nobody else is listening, but I know that I'm on the radio. So can I ask you this? Like, why does Jesus have to die such a painful death? That's not good. That's not nice. And the minister just cracked up and he said, my congregation is asking me that all the time. They said, I like the Jesus that's the no pain Jesus. Could we have the no pain Jesus, please? I don't want to have to go through pain before I understand something. And we laughed about that. And then I said, okay, I got another question, because obviously it's airing on Valentine's Day. So some of this was geared towards love because of Valentine's Day. And we talked about different Saint Valentines and what it really meant and all of these things. We talked about all that. But and we talked about love, and the minister gave some really cool examples of love and what it means to be giving for love and whatever. But I said, can I ask you another question? How'd you guys get away with like having chocolate affiliated with every single holiday? It's just not fair. Like, you got Valentine's Day with chocolate and Easter with bunnies, and like, it's not fair. I don't have chocolate like for holidays. It's not fair. Anyway, we finally did. We finally made chocolate coins for Hanukkah, but that's it. Did you ever see Jon Stewart did a thing about comparing Passover with Easter and who wins? Like, there's no way that we win because, look, you've got bunnies with chocolate ears and like we have horseradish on matzah. We lose so badly. Right. So speaking of that, there's a verb here. The verb is ayin nun he, which means to answer or to reply. And if you look at it, you can see what the flags are, the things that you would have to worry about. The things about worrying is when will the regular vowel pattern change? And the regular vowel pattern will change because there's an ayin at the beginning, which is a guttural letter. So there are certain things that can't happen with gutturals, like you'll never have a moving shva under a guttural, and instead you'll have to have a composite shva. And then the hey at the end, and we know that it does things like in the past tense, it's going to turn into an E instead of a hey. The hey will drop out. So you just have to watch for all of the regular things that are going to happen with when the first letter, when it's pei gronit, it's called, when it's a pei guttural, or the first letter is a guttural, or lamed hey, when the last letter is a hey. All of those things are going to happen. Watch for them. This word et, which sounds unfortunately a lot like et, which is the definite direct object. The definite direct object marker is et, spelled with an aleph and a tav. This is an ayin and a tav. Notice how I pronounce my ayin. It's a feminine word because it ends in tav, and it means time. Like if you want to say at a propitious time, you would use the word et. And then this word, which I can't help but think is related, is ata, which is one of the words for now. Ata, not to be confused with ata that's spelled with an aleph, which means you, masculine singular. There is another word for now, and that's achshav. We didn't see that yet, but if anyone has heard of the word now, they may have said, that's not what I was thinking, but ata.
I can't help but imagine a parent. Ata! Ata!
Right, you, now, here. That's true.
I learned a song when I was in camp.
Which one?
Ata, but I'm not going to sing for you guys.
Achshav, achshav, that one. Achshav. That's why I figured you were going to think of achshav instead of ata if I say it means now. Achshav, achshav, be'eretz Yisrael. Hey, tumba, 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 be'eretz Yisrael. Most people think of it, you dance it almost like a Mexican hat dance. It's a really folk dance. All right, so then we get, sorry?
Back to time on
yes.
8. Did you say, notice how I pronounce my
ayin?
So you changed the pronunciation, or you based your pronunciation not just on the.
No, I always pronounce my ayin. Ayin, nun hey, that's this root. Eight is time. Ata, that's how you pronounce them. It's not this. You're not supposed to pronounce an ayin the same way you pronounce an aleph. Aleph, ayin.
With the same vowel under it, it's slightly different.
Well, the consonant sounds different. So an aleph, and here's the truth. The truth is, the most people that you encounter in Israel are going to pronounce an ayin and an aleph the same way. It's silent, essentially silent. But anyone you meet who has an origin from the Middle East is not going to pronounce an ayin without pronouncing the ayin. And then other people who have grown up with other dialects, in some dialects, in dialectology, the ayin is an NG.
Okay.
But it's more like la, like you're swallowing your not like gla, but la. And so that's your glottal stop.
Wow.
So there's a difference between a glottal stop where you just close your throat and open it up, and a voiced glottal stop where you close your throat and open it up, but there's sound coming out of it. And that's what I'm doing with my ayin as opposed to my aleph. That's an aleph.
What's the name of that vowel? I never forget.
That's a patach underneath for this one, for atach.
For
same thing, eight. That's a tzera.
A tzera, okay. Because I get confused whether it sounds closer to a short E or a long A.
It's okay. That's a good. You're entitled. You're very entitled. Because when I was growing up, this was always eight. Eight, more like eight than et. In modern Israeli pronunciation, it will always be unless it's got like a yud or an aleph afterwards, and then it becomes like this a instead of So et. Sorry about that. Yeah, you're right. I probably said eight.
Yeah, I wrote it down. Pronounce ATE, long A. So we don't have it.
So you can pronounce it like that, and it wouldn't get anybody mad. Everybody will know what you mean. It's not going to hurt your feelings. It is. So I would say that probably
There's no
60% of the people in Israel grew up in a home where that would have been the pronunciation, that it was an A.
Right. Got it.
But the normative pronunciation in Israel right now is that whether it's the tzera, which is the 2 dots, or the segel, which is what this kid just taught me was 3 eggs in a basket, so it's for eggs. Whether it's 3 eggs in a basket or the 2 eggs, it's still
It's just eggs in the basket. Okay.
They're still okay. And it becomes an A only when it's attached to a yud, which makes sense because it's A.
Yeah, glides
or the aleph afterwards. So, but I am embarrassed to tell you, I will slip into Ashkefardic all the time. You'll hear me Ashkefardic. What I just heard somebody give it's a sermon that it's not a sermon, but it's a video that I'm hoping to get permission to be able to use. It's trying to tell us how we need to be more responsible as Jews during Black History Month, how we're supposed to be more responsible, what we have to open our eyes to, what we have to do. And this is the guy who's the head of the Reform movement, the rabbi who's the kind of president of the Reform movement. And he used the word, he said a lot of his teachers use the word Ashka normative, so that most Jews where we grew up think that their form of Ashkenazic Judaism is the way it's supposed to be. And almost everybody you would ever encounter may have come from a slightly different part of Eastern Europe, but the traditions were 94, 5, 6% the same. And so that would have been Ashkenazic Judaism. And they would have said A with a tzera every time. But they would have said ace. They would have pronounced the tav as a sa.
Right.
Just saying. So et is feminine, et is feminine, et is feminine with a smichut. Ata, if you want me to say it, is now. Then you get to, we good on those words? All right. So then you get to the letter pe. The name of the letter is pe, and it means mouth, and we've talked about it before, but now we finally get to learn the word mouth. And the word p, as embarrassing as that sounds, means mouth of. It also means my mouth. And pet is masculine. Then we get the word holy, holiness or holy thing. And these are the noun forms kodesh, the accent's on the first syllable. And then you're going to get kodashim. It's not kadashim, it's kodashim. And then you're going to get kodesh is the smichut, and you're going to get kodshe. These should be kamatz katan. That's the one when it sounds like an O for these, because it's actually this vowel, the O vowel, is getting smaller. That's how I was taught it anyway. And then we finally get to the word shana, which is year, like Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. The plural of shana, believe it or not, even though shana is obviously feminine, is shanim. So I'd have to say shanim tovot, good years. Shnat, which sounds like, you know what. Shnat means year of. Shnei, which sounds like 2 somethings, because the word for 2 somethings is shnei, but it is also the word for years of. And they're all feminine. Mea, the number in regular word form, can be followed by either a singular or a plural noun. There are times when we do that. I remember when I was married to a guy whose native language was Italian, and he learned like 3 languages before he learned English. And there are certain things that I don't even remember studying a rule for in elementary school or middle school, or when we get, like when you say you've got 300 things instead of 300s things, or, you know, there are times when you use a plural ending and times when you don't with numbers, that until I heard him mess up all the time and I wanted to teach him what the rule was, I realized it's not consistent. I have no clue what to tell you for these things. And I don't think that's even the best example. It's like, I don't know, a 30 bucket order, you know, like, why is it 30 bucket? Why isn't it 30 buckets? You know, things like that. There's some weird things that we do in English also. So I'm just telling you, you could say mea, I could say mea shana, I could say mea shanim, like they're saying. I could say ma'at means 100 of year, ma'at shana. and they're all going to mean essentially 100 years. So then they tell you the same thing I just said. The verb ana follows the same pattern as other verbs ending in hey. The spelling is found on their verb chart. The first kamatz in kodshe and kodshim is pronounced as O and low. You know that in my word processor, I have a longer bottom. You are welcome to do something to change that in your book. I didn't scribble in the book because I don't have the book. She has it still in the office. And then we have these idioms. There's some good idioms. Al-ken. Al-ken berach Adonai et yom hashvi. And therefore God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Al-ken is therefore. Upon thus, yeah, not exactly. Acharei chen. You notice that it's kind of squished together enough so that this long vowel is affecting the fact that it doesn't take a dagesh here. Acharei chen means afterwards. After thus. Kodesh HaKodashim is the Holy of Holies. And it's got this bizarre thing happening under this kuf. There is no reason that you need a composite shva under a kuf. Composite shva should only be under silent letters. What's going on here? My guess is it came from an older form. I have no idea what did that. So I'm going to give Lisa the 2 minute, the 1 minute quickie on this because we've talked about this before. We learned that the letter Vav can be attached to almost any word and you translate it as and David Yosef, David and Joseph. It's got another use in biblical Hebrew. When you attach it to a verb in just v, in the perfect or imperfect tense, it can reverse the tense of the verb. They call it the reversing Vav. It's also called the conversive Vav. I think there's one more name for it, but it doesn't matter. The use of the reversing Vav is a distinguished feature of biblical Hebrew. When the reversing Vav is attached to a verb in the perfect tense, it changes the tense of the verb to imperfect. We've talked about this enough, right? So you see something that looks past tense, Shamru, Bnei Yisrael et HaTorah. They, the children of Israel, guarded the Torah. But it says, it's not just that. It's not just that you add a v. You also have to change the accent. In a past tense, you have to change the accent. So instead of vishamru, which means and they guarded, if you say vishamru, it means and they will guard. Bnei Yisrael et HaTorah. If you say ahavta et ha'isha hazot, you loved this woman. But if you say ve'ahavta, that means you will love this woman. They look the same. You have to know to change it. How are you going to know to change it? You can't know in a textbook, but in the Torah, you will know. In the Tanakh, you will know because there'll be trope marks, and the trope marks will remind you where the accented syllable is. So, for example, Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, you shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your being. You're looking at the word Ve'ahavta, which looks like and you loved, but you add the va, you change the accent to the end of the word, and it's and you will love or you shall love. It works in the imperfect to the perfect. In other words, if you see something that looks like it's a future tense, yishmaru, they will guard, and it's going to look very different in the future to the past. It's really helpful. You're going to see a va instead of a va, and you're going to see a dagesh usually in the next letter. Sometimes the next letter is already going to have the dagesh like this one, but it's going to be a va, vayishmaru. Yishmaru and vayishmaru. You don't have to change the accent. Tizkor, as you will remember, va tizkor. It's got a va tizkor. There are lots of times when a vav precedes a verb and doesn't reverse the tense. In the text, any vav preceding a perfect or imperfect verb is what?
In this text.
In this text. I don't believe them. That's ridiculous. I don't believe them. That means everywhere in this book where there's a vav, it's reversing vav. I don't believe them because they're going to make us do the wachmahuzi. All right, so we'll continue looking. Lisa has to go. She has another thing. I don't want to make you miss this, but we are recording. You could watch the last few minutes.
Now we can all try to get caught up to where Lisa is.
Yeah.
Now we can actually do the work Lisa's already done.
No.
Yes, Lisa, take the compliment.
Yeah, thank
It's meant as a sincere compliment.
I love this class.
Yep, I love this class too. I was bragging about you guys today a lot about how much Hebrew you all know. Amazing. I know someone here who's related to someone in my congregation, and that someone has to say, you think we all know Hebrew? We don't all know Hebrew. She throws these Hebrew words around, and like my congregation.
Well, the interesting thing about this is that we can double our vocabulary with a vav or
in some
a
sense.
prefix.
In some sense you do, but it also freaks you out. I told you my infamous story about how I was at a college where 40% of the thousands of people there were Jewish. And I was at a Friday night service at Hillel, and I'm in this room where it's all windows and I can see over the whole campus. And we didn't even have 10 adult Jews, and we were all adults. If you're over 13, you're an adult Jew. We didn't have 10 Jews for this service. And I get to the Vahafta, and I just come back from Israel. So I wasn't just saying the words. Every once in a while, the words meant something to me. And I'm looking at Vahafta et Adonai, and all of a sudden I saw it as, and you loved Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your being. I'm like, what do you mean you loved? And I had this horrible rush of, it's over. It's past tense. We're not coming to services. We're not doing anything. We loved God, and now it's done. And we were supposed to teach
We're finished loving God.
We're done. We were supposed to teach them to our children. We were supposed to speak of them when we sat down, when we moved, walked around. All the time, we didn't do it, and it was all reversing, and it was horrible and traumatic. And then we finally shifted to a prayer book where the trope marks were in there. When the trope marks are in there, then you know the accent shifts, and it helps a lot. It was traumatic. So be careful when you look at a word, especially going from what they're calling perfect, the past tense, to the future tense, when you're understanding the reversing here. So shamarta, but it's vishamarta. Be very careful to notice where the accent is, to know which one it's supposed to be.
Does the verb sometimes get translated as a reversing verb, but also as the word and? All
Yes.
shot?
As a
Okay.
matter of fact, they call it conversive partially sometimes instead of reversing, not our text, but in other textbooks, because usually it happens within a context of I'm going to call it a story. It's not always story, but it's going to be in context of one thing happens and then another and then another. So there is often a sequence of events. And so you're going to, I would always include it as an and. It's also an and. I think.
And the reason we would use it instead of just using the future tense, like
you wouldn't. It's only in biblical Hebrew. You would never do this in modern Hebrew.
Why did they do it?
Why did they do it?
Why'd they use the verb instead of just use the tense they wanted to convey?
So I don't know, but I can tell you that it is awesome to know that these words are eternal, and you're looking at the past and knowing its future, and you're looking at the future and knowing its past. So I don't know if it was this creative God genius writing the book. Who wrote the book? I don't know. We don't know why, but it's the only language I know that does it. It's the only time it does it. It doesn't do it in liturgical Hebrew. You didn't do it in conversational Hebrew. You just did it in God's word text.
Right.
I'm going to have to leave. I hope you have a wonderful staycation next week.
Thank you very much.
I'll miss class. I'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Thank you. I'll try to post all of
Okay.
the lessons in between so that we can catch up.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
So I don't know, but I think it's glorious. I think it's really glorious that we have this, and that it's Torah or Tanakh. It's all of the scriptures. It's not just Torah. It happens all the time. And I think that now, especially with computers, there are some ways of like counting. How many times is the perfect represented to mean the past, and how many times is the perfect represented to mean the future? And they can do that, then they can try to make sense out of it. But I don't know. I just think it's glorious. And it also makes you stop and think. In other words, you're reading and reading and reading, and all of a sudden you're like, wait. They did what? Oh, they will do. Okay, I got it. Like it makes it not
Rote.
yeah, and it's partially rote, and you can't do I think we've talked about this before. you can't do the Evelyn Wood speed reading for Hebrew, because Hebrew goes up and down and up and down and up and down. English goes whoop, so you can just go shoop and you can read it, but Hebrew goes da, 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 da. And you've got all of these things, especially if it's without vowels, then it's horrible. Forget it. And it's really difficult. But I think it's to keep you paying attention. I don't know.
What's the percentage of dyslexics in Hebrew, in Israel?
So I don't know, and maybe Lang knows that, but I do know that whenever I have a student who has been diagnosed as dyslexic,
Yeah.
I do not see the same dyslexia in Hebrew. But the tricks that they've learned to cope with dyslexia in English, it makes them really good Hebrew readers. I find that people who have been diagnosed with dyslexia generally read Hebrew really well. And people always panic, like, should I let my kid read this language? It goes the other way. I mean, he's already getting B's and D's and all these things mixed up. So number one, that's a misunderstanding about what dyslexia is. But two, I find partially because it's a new kind of decoding for them, that it's easier for them. Although Rabbi Kowaler, who was the rabbi at the other synagogue, he used to make all kinds of reading errors, and he used to say it was because he was dyslexic. And it's hard to say that that's what, I didn't see that specifically in it. I mean, reading Hebrew, trying to read fluently is a hard thing to do no matter what. And as a rabbi, you're put in a position where you have to read a lot of Hebrew, and it's not always something that you're familiar with, or have practiced a lot. And so I don't know if that was an excuse or if it really was a dyslexia, but it wasn't the kind of mistakes I saw. I don't see the same mistakes. I also don't see the same mistakes if you have speech impediments, speech problems, and you're trying to read in Hebrew. The way that I've been teaching the kids to read in Hebrew, they never make those same mistakes in Hebrew that they're making in English still. Like, so if they can't say an L, I will say, so the letter is, look, lamed, put your tongue here, lamed, and they'll never say it any other way. But, I'm not going to say it sounds like an L. I'm just going to say this is the letter lamed. So say it like that. And they do, and they never get it wrong. So
that's because she's teaching it like a speech language pathologist rather than as us.
Yep, I do that. So this is a bunch of vocabulary words showing it happening. I don't know if we should see it. We should run through it. Yeah.
Man, I don't know if you want me to go into the dyslexia thing, but
No, it's okay.
As Rabbi said, it's not, oh, they reverse letters.
No, it's not that. And but
fact,
people are always worried about reading a language in the opposite direction thing. It's going to mess everybody up, but it often doesn't. And I don't think it's because a kid with dyslexia in this kind of superficial, often incorrect way of understanding dyslexia, where they think that they're reading all the letters backwards. I don't think that it's because this is finally the language that's going in the right direction for them. I don't think that's the solution here. All right, so as I pointed out, you're going to have a change in accent. So instead of shamarti, which is I guarded, it's vishamarti, which is I will guard. Shamarta, which is you guarded, vishamarta. Shamart, which is you guarded feminine, to vishamar, vishamart, shamart, vishamar, shamart. That's right. Shamar is he guarded. Vishamar. I'd have to look at the ones. We'd have to look at these things. And it's driving me crazy that they don't have any accents. These are way easier. Look at this. You have a va in front, not va. So that's your first clue. Before an aleph, it changes into a kamatz because I can't have that dagesh. Before the tav, it's going to just have that dagesh, which you would have had anyway, but it's still a va. Tishmari is va tishmari. But you see it most often in the third person. More often than anything else, you'll see this in the third person for at least in the switching from the imperfect verb. That's a Rabbi J-ism. That's not, I can't promise it's true, but that's my perspective. Yishmor is vayishmor, and you'll see a va, and you'll see a dagesh in the next letter. Va tishmor, you'll see a va and you'll see a dagesh in the next letter, but there was already a dagesh. That doesn't help. You see nishmor, we will guard va nishmor, where you'll see a va and a dagesh in the next letter. Tishmaru, va tishmaru, you see a va. And same thing, tishmorna, va tishmorna. Yishmaru, here you go. Look for that va with the dagesh afterwards. That's your clue. It's so cool when it happens. So that's, yeah.
In Genesis, when it says Yehi or.
Yeah, that's another form. That's not a, there's no va. When it says Vayehi or, and there was light.
So the first part is what tense?
You know, it's funny that you asked that, because one of our, let me see, one of the book, I would have said that it was, I like to interpret it. I think it's the next page in one of our books. I like to say that it is the a command form, be light.
Be light.
But no, it's this book. It's coming up in another page. Watch, they're going to answer it. They're going to tell you that sometimes it gets dropped. That's not how I understand it. I don't think that's what's happening, but that's what they're trying to say happens.
Okay.
It's not illegitimate. Let's take a look. So I'll show you what I mean. Where is it?
It almost sounds.
Here, look. Sometimes a clip form may appear without a reversing vav. Two very common examples are yehi and yehi chen. They're saying that yehi is like saying vayehi, may it be. And I think it's not.
But their argument would be that vav, the second one, is just the and. May it be, and but you want it to be and it was, and there was light, so you want it to be reversing something, right?
Well, so the first time it isn't. Yehi or is the first one, and then vayehi or, right. I think it means be light. I think it's a command form, yehi or. It's strange because the yehi here, they're saying it means may it be, may light be. And I'm saying that it reminds me more of it's an awkward command. I'm not going to lie. So because the yud at the beginning means it's a third person.
Mm-hmm.
May light be. And I'm saying that I see it more as a command of yehi, may be light. It's not talking to light, it's talking about light, about being light. And it's an awkward form, but it's also awkward to take away the vav and think the vav is still there. I'm just saying, if they can have their fantasy, I can have mine.
Right. Okay, cool.
So, I mean, they're throwing this in there, that's fine. It doesn't hurt my feelings much. But the clip form, this is, when you have a hey at the end of a letter, on the end of a verb form, sometimes here's what's fun. It's called apocopated. Isn't that a good word? Why didn't they say apocopated? Why did they say clipped? I like apocopated. Isn't that better? So when the hey drops off at the end, then it's an apocopated form. And most of the time it's going to happen in third person. So watch. Yehiyeh is, it will be vayehi is, and it was. So it's the past form here, vayehi. You're not going to see that last hey, but it's still there for the root. You have to know that vayehi means and it was, and that it comes from the root for haya. Yir'eh, the root is resh, aleph, hey, see. Yir'eh, and you'll see vayar. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa. And God saw everything that he made. Vehine tov me'od. Ya'aseh is he will do or make, but if you say vaya'as, it means and he made or he did it. Ya'aleh, he will go up. Vaya'al. These are fairly common. They're not uncommon. So if you saw something like vayehi, wouldn't you know that something is being something? And if you see a va at the beginning, hopefully you know that means, oh, it's a reversing vav. What word could that possibly have been? Oh yeah, it has to be the verb to be. If you see a vayar, then you say reversing vav with a dagesh. I know that means past tense instead of future tense. What's this word that looks like, oh, it must be ra'ah. I mean, you have to get there. You'll have to get there. And sometimes it's just from familiarity. Yihiyeh shalom ba'aretz hahi. Vayehi shalom ba'aretz hahi. there will be peace in this land, or and there was, and came to pass, and once upon a time, there was peace in the land. Yosef et aviv, Joseph will see his father. Vayar Yosef et aviv. This is Joseph saw. It's past tense. It's taking the reversing vav. It looks future, but it's going back. Ya'aseh hamelech milchama. No, the king will make war. We're done. Vaya'as hamelech milchama. The king made war. Oh, but Amar has this, but Amar comes so frequently with this reversing vav, where you say, and the verb Amar takes a versing vav in the imperfect, and in the imperfect, it has some vowel changes. So Yomar is he will say, but it's Vayomer, and the accent shifts to Yo, Vayomer. And actually, I think I need to tell you the accent does shift. I think you'll see. We'll look at some real stuff and you'll see. Tomar, she will say, Vatomer. Yomar David Shalom. Vayomer David Shalom. Ugh. That was your hint. Guttural means ugh. That's a guttural right there. You've already learned how to recognize regular imperfect verbs and drop letter imperfect verbs. We will call the third, well, so that's three. Regular ones they're calling, and then the drop letter where they're apocopated because the end chops off. We will call the third group of imperfect verbs guttural imperfects. The guttural imperfects each contain at least one of the 5 guttural letters in the root. Remember the 5 guttural letters are ha'ach ra, the brother is bad. Ha'ach ra, those 5 letters. Hey, aleph, chet, resh, ayin, or aleph, hey, chet, ayin, resh, in order. Following is a chart which shows these verbs. They all have it. So instead of evor, why are they doing this? Why are they showing me this? They're just showing you how to translate, how to conjugate them. They're not showing you it has anything to do with imperfects. So I've already told you that if you have a guttural, there's going to be a problem whenever you need a moving schwa under it. So look for all the places where we need a moving schwa, and don't be surprised when it has a composite. That's the clue here. That's the primary clue. And then we get to examples. But the example that I wanted, I don't want to read Cinderella. I wanted to read some real Hebrew here. I think there's a section of real Torah. Ugh, Cinderella. No, all we get is Ruth. I thought there was a real real Torah section in this one. Okay, quotes from the Bible. Here we go. So, Vayomer Elohim Yehi Or, Vayhi Or. Vayomer Elohim is, and God said, Yehi Or. And if you want, you could say, may it be light, but I think it's be light. Vayhi Or, and light was. And I want to point out to you what I pointed out to you when we were learning the alphabet, that all of these words, they're breathing letters. Vayomer Elohim. And by the time you get to Elohim, you're just breathing. What was there? All there was Ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim, that just the breath of God was hovering on the face of the waters. And then you hear, you hear, be light. God didn't have to shout it. Let there be light. There was no reason for that. We'll have none of that, God. And then it says, Vayar Elohim, and God saw et haor, the light, ki tov, that it was good, or because it's good. Vayavdel, and God separated, Vayavdel, and you see that that's a va with a dagesh, so you know that it's a reversing, separated, past tense. Elohim, and God separated, bein haor, between the light, uvein hachoshech, in between the darkness. Or is light, and choshech, I think it sounds like velvet. Or snoring, whichever you like, or both. Vaikra Elohim laor yom, and God called, and this is past tense. It looks like future, but it's past tense, to the light, day, and that's how God named things. He called to them. V'lachoshech, and to the darkness, kara, that's past tense. Looks like past tense. Lila, called night. And those are cool, if you recall, because yom and Laila are suckling sounds. God is naming this baby, all of the things from the baby world with suckling sounds. Vayhi Erev, and there was evening. Vayhi Voker, and there was morning. Yom Echad, one day. Got it? And then we have all of these words we're going to hear from First Kings, from the prophets. Vayomer Natan el bat Sheva, em Shlomo lemor. Let's do phrase by phrase. Vayomer Natan, what does that mean?
And
And Nathan said,
Nathan said, it's past tense, it looks like future, but it's got the va and the dot. El bat Sheva,
to the daughter.
to the daughter of 7. Or you could say, guess what her name was? Bat Sheva. How can I tell which it is?
Oh,
Natan also means gave. So all of these names, it's like, running with scissors. You can always tell that the names also mean things, but they're also names. So Vayomer Natan, and Nathan said to Batsheva, em Shlomo, the mother of, and you could say that his name means peace, but it means the mother of Solomon, Lemor, saying, that's usually, you translate that as saying, hello, I love that word. Hello, Shamat, Malach Adonyahu, Ben Chagit, Va'adonenu, David, Lo Yada. All right, let's see what we can do with this sentence. Hello. So hello means, hello, see, they're not even giving, oh, there it is. It's, so I always think it's like, duh.
hello.
But it's exactly, I always read it like that, hello. But ha at the beginning of a word, I know we have the ha that means the, but sometimes in biblical Hebrew, ha at the beginning of the word, especially with this modified spelling, is kind of it's called the interrogative hey. It's a hey that means we're about to start a question. And lo means no, is not. So when it says, it's like, so wouldn't you say didn't? Or something like that, saying, didn't Shamata, didn't you hear? Ki Malach Adonyahu ben Chagit, that Adonyahu ruled, the son of Chagit, the son of Adonyahu, son of Chagit ruled, Va'adonenu David lo yadu, and our master, our Lord, David didn't know. That makes sense? That's a real quote from First Kings. We're not watering it down for you like we are with the book of Ruth. Lachi uvoi el hamelech David. Lachi uvoi. This is one of those, make up your mind, dude. Make up your mind. What does lachi uvoi mean? So lachi is a, sorry, oops. It tells you. Lachi is a command form of holech, go, for a female, go. And voi is the command form for a female, for come. So it's saying go and come. What?
Like lech lecha.
It's not a lech lecha, but it's kind of meaning something like this. It's come on, let's go. It's something like that. Lachi uvoi el hamelech, go and come to the king, to El Hamelech David, to King David. Va'amart,
Oh, and come
elav.
the King David.
Va'amart elav, and you will say to him, hello. No, it's not. Hello, ata Adoni Hamelech. Didn't you, my master the king, nishbata la'amatacha lemor? Didn't you swear to your female servant, your maidservant, your female servant, lemor, saying, Kishlomo v'nech yimloch acharai, that Shlomo, your son, v'nech yimloch, will rule, acharai, after me. V'hu yeshev al kis'i, and he will sit al kisi, on my chair, which is implying throne here. Umadua malach Adonyahu, And why did Adoniyahu rule? Oh, that's as far as we go. The
It
story,
was all one sentence.
the suspense is killing me.
Why did he?
Why did he? We don't even get to answer that. That's so mean. All right. So now, one of the things that they have taken away from us most of all in trying to water down the book of Ruth is the reversing vav. They have been giving us they've been giving us the tense by swapping it out for the reversing vav. So you are going to see, this is a huge jump from, like 20% accurate text to 80% accurate text just because of this alone. Vatashav Naomi Verut Hamoavia Imah. Vatashav. So the root, you may recognize the word from teshuvah, from tshuva, from doing repentance, that you turn around, that you repent, you turn around, you go to the right way. Vatashav is, and she returned. Naomi returned. Verut Moavia ima, and Ruth ha Moavia, the Moabite, female Moabite, Moabitess, female Moabite, imah, with her. It has the mapik at the end, so that's showing it's with her. You have to say the at the end of that word, imah.
This is why Kathy wanted to come to today's class, because this is her Torah portion.
Oh yeah. Vehema halchu el beit lechem be'et hakatzil. Vehema, and they, halchu, went, el beit lechem, to the house of bread, which is Beit Lechem, be'et hakatzil, at the time of the harvest, be'et hakatzil.
Good time to go to the house of bread.
Yep. Ule Naomi moda leisha. And to Naomi, there was a kinsman, someone who knew. It comes from yada, from knowing. Leisha, kinsman to her husband, ish. There was a moda, there was a kinsman to her husband, her man. Her man is her husband. Ish gadol, he was a big guy. No, he was a great guy. He was an important guy. Mi mishpachat Elimelech ushmo Boaz. He was a big and important, a great man from the family of Elimelech. That was the guy's name, even though it means my God is king. Ushmo, and his name is Boaz. What does Boaz mean? Doesn't matter. That's his name.
Boaz.
Vatomer Ruth Hamoavia el Naomi. And Ruth said, even though it looks like future tense, and Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, Elech el hasadeh va'alakta bakatzil. I will go to the field, Elech el hasadeh va'alakta, and I will, it's the reversing vav, and I will, doesn't have a kamatz there, but that's okay. And I will glean, leket, I will, it's not harvest, I will glean, we'll say glean, bakatzir, in the harvest, the katzir is the harvest. Vatomer Naomi la, and Naomi said, even though it looks like future tense, to her, Telchi biti, you go, my daughter. I think she said, you go, girl, right? Vatelech Ruth el sde Boaz, and Ruth went, past tense, even though it looks like future tense, to sde Boaz, the fields of Boaz, asher mi mishpachat Elimelech, that were from the family of Elimelech. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of the chapter. So we can potentially go over exercises, but it won't be next week. And actually, oh wait, no, this is a Thursday class. I noticed that the week after, the 17th, so next week is the 16th, which is Mardi Gras, and it happens to also be the 4th of Adar. What? And that the 17th is the Wednesday class where we're not going to have, and the 18th is the Thursday class we're not going to have, and then the following week we're good. We have a Wednesday class. Thursday class is Purim. So we may want to do
Drink.
we may want to chug. We may want to drink. We may want to do some Megillah reading or something that night. And then the following week, Wednesday happens to be March 3rd. And March 4th actually has other than the obvious, wasn't there like a military or something, the March 4th? Wasn't there a reason for March 4th being a big deal? I know May 4th is May the 4th be with you, but March 4th was marching forth into the whatever. But March 4th, the Federation has a program for Mazon, for feeding the poor. So and I don't remember what time that's going to be. So we may be stuck on these chapters for a little bit. Erin, I don't know if you caught any of that. Were you listening?
No, I had to run out for a second.
Okay, so let me show you two things. The last sentence that you didn't get to translate.
Okay.
Vatelech, Ruth, and Ruth went out. It looks like it's future, but we have to understand it as past. Else de Boaz, to the fields of Boaz, asher mi mishpachat Elimelech, that are from the family mi mishpachat Elimelech, that are from the family of Elimelech. Okay.
Okay.
So that was the whole thing, and that was a lot of Hebrew. And then we were talking about dates of things, and I realized, so next week, Wednesday and Thursday, we have no class. And Tuesday, we noticed, was Mardi Gras, the non-existent Mardi Gras, but it's also the 4th of Adar, which is Rabbi Jana's birthday. It's her Hebrew birthday. That was another thing, by the way, that happened at this.
Right, is it also Together Tuesday?
No, that's the first Tuesday of the month. It's
You said
also
the 4th.
No. So no, starting with today, next Tuesday is the 16th, and it's Mardi Gras, and it's the B'nai Zion board meeting, and I'm not going. And then
Wait,
Wednesday,
your Hebrew birthday is on Mardi Gras. Is that this year? That's what you're saying? Ah,
you noticed, and I'm taking off.
yeah.
And I may not decorate myself or anything.
Should I show them my bead?
The new bead.
The necklace?
Oh yeah, we just got Karen
gotta
and
get it down.
Stu of Centaur. So yeah.
I celebrate my real birthday. I don't mean to say real.
Your real
My
birthday, yes, your secular birthday.
secular birthday. That's David.
Hi, David.
Hi.
David.
Yes. we call him
Davide.
David.
In Italian, he's Davide. In Hebrew, he's David.
Yep.
Uh,
He gets
Mike-
called those a lot. So, because he's part Italian. That's what we
That's
always-
true. So he gets Davide. So that
Yeah.
was, imagine that your last name is De Benedetti. I asked my in-laws. My in-laws kept saying that, they wanted grandkids. So I'm going to